Concrete is the most widely used man-made material on Earth because of how strong and customizable it is. Travel time, ambient weather conditions, product use, set time, and many other variables can all affect the decision of what type of concrete mix to use. Every pour is different, and because of this, every load is different. Your first priority as operator of a concrete mixer is to be able to understand each load you take and what it will require to successfully deliver it. All of this information can be found on your delivery ticket. This video will show you each part of a delivery ticket, what information it contains, and how to use that information to successfully deliver your load. The first thing you will notice is that 3 copies of a ticket will print. The white copy should come back to the plant to be used by the billing department. The yellow and red copies are to be given to the customer. On the back of the ticket, you will find an SDS for ready mix concrete. Here's a sample ticket we can use to show you all the sections of a ticket and what they mean. At the top of the ticket, there is Ozinga's contact information. This is to help customers be able to reach the right person in the event that they have questions or concerns about their load. When you get your ticket, the first thing you want to do is check the truck number and driver boxes to make sure the load is actually for you. Sometimes trucks pull under the load out of the order dispatch intended, or multiple tickets are stacked up in the printer. Getting the wrong ticket could result in the loss of a load or worse. If your ticket has a different truck number or driver on it, say something to your plant manager. The next thing you need to do is write down the time in the 10-1 load box. If available at your plant, stamp the time with a time clock. Over the course of the load, you will write down the time in the corresponding box as you progress through the stages of delivery. These times can be used by management to determine if customers need to pay extra charges for keeping a driver too long, or if a load has exceeded a time limit specified in the job. Once you're sure you have the right load, it's time to figure out how to get to the job site. It can take time to go over directions, so if you aren't sure about the route to the job, make sure to ask your plant manager as you begin loading, not after you're finished. The customer number and name box will tell you who you will be delivering to. We will be pouring for Everyman Construction today, and it looks like he is a COD account, so we will need to collect upon delivery. Some sites might have several contractors pouring off of us at the same time, or even multiple crews working for the same contractor, so be sure you know which one your load belongs to. Below the customer information will be a delivery address or the nearest intersection. The instructions box will contain directions on how to get to the job. If you need clarification on these directions, ask your plant manager. He can help answer questions you might have and can also print you a map if you need it. Other drivers who have been to the job before can also help. Keep in mind that the directions on your ticket might avoid low bridges, weight restrictions, road closures, or traffic issues. Check with your plant manager before deviating from them. The instructions section might also contain other information, such as how to access the job once you arrive. You may need to enter from an alley or construction entrance, avoid a hazard such as low-hanging cables, or go to a specific part of the job site where multiple crews are pouring. Do not leave the plant until you are sure you understand how to get to the job, where to pour, and who to pour for. And finally, the instructions section could list materials you need to take with you to the job, such as a portable chute, also known as an elephant trunk. It also might include other information about your load, so be sure to read it carefully. Looking at our sample ticket, it appears that we need to come in through the parking lot and proceed around to the back of the building. It also looks like Everyman Construction has already paid for their concrete with a credit card, so we won't have to worry about collecting after all. Once you know where to go, it's time to look at the load that you'll be hauling. The top line of the product box always contains the concrete mix. This product code and description can tell you some basic information about the concrete you will be hauling. Let's look at the load on our sample ticket. It's a 4,000 psi mix, which means when it reaches its full strength, it should hold 4,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. This is a common strength for outdoor concrete, which must endure harsh cold weather and freeze-thaw cycles. It also says it's a full AE mix, which stands for air entrained. Air entrainment is a chemical added to the concrete that causes little air bubbles to form within the mix. This also gives the concrete the durability needed to withstand harsh winter conditions. If we look up in the use box, we can see that this concrete is for a ramp, and since the mix points to an outdoor pour, when we arrive on the job we should expect to see an exterior sidewalk ramp or something similar. Let's look at a different mix. Here we have a 3,000 psi low AE mix, so it doesn't have much air entrainment, and there is an N at the end of the product code. The N stands for native stone, which is commonly called gravel. Most concrete is made with limestone, which is dense and strong, but coarse. Gravel is smoother and easier to finish, but it also absorbs water, so it can't be used for exterior pours or the rocks will explode or pop during the winter and create holes in the concrete surface. A low-strength, low-air mix with gravel is a common foundation or footing mix. If we look up in the use box, we can see that that's what this is for. This footing will go on the ground and provide a base for a wall, so it won't be exposed to the elements. Here we have a mix that says NDOT Class B. Mixes like this are specifically designed for a job or customer, in this case the Indiana Department of Transportation, or NDOT. While most mixes are designed around a desired final strength, such as 4,000 psi, some are designed around a desired amount of cement powder in the mix. In this case, Class B refers to a mix that contains 470 pounds of cement per yard. Often mixes like this will be labeled as having so many bags of cement in them, with each bag representing 94 pounds of cement. So a 6-bag mix would have 564 pounds of cement. Since this mix is going to a state agency, the driver will need to take the batch weights with the load. This is a paper printout of all the materials that went into the mix. This proves to the inspector on the job that the mix contains the specified amount of cement per yard. Now that we know what kind of mix we are hauling, we need to know the size of the load. Concrete is measured in cubic yards, often just referred to as yards. Concrete mixers haul loads anywhere from 1 yard to 10 yards of concrete at a time. The size of a load can greatly affect how it mixes, how it pours, and how it affects the truck driving down the road. Often concrete pours will require more than one load. This is indicated in the product section. Our sample ticket shows that we are hauling an 8.5 yard load. The ordered quantity column shows how many total yards are ordered for this pour, and the cumulative quantity column shows how many of those loads have been loaded. Our order is for 8.5 yards, so we are bringing all the concrete to the job that the customer needs for this pour. Here we can see a ticket for a 7-yard load out of a total of 21.5 yards. The cumulative quantity tells us that this is the final load for this pour, reaching the total of 21.5 yards. When this truck arrives on the job, he will likely see the truck that brought the previous load. This might help the driver see where he will be pouring and how to access the pour. On a COD order, only the final truck will need to collect, and his ticket will show both the total for his load and the final total for all the loads brought to that job. Even though we know what mix we have and how much of it we are carrying, we still need to know the slump in order to meet the customer's needs. Slump is a measurement of the consistency or workability of the concrete mix. Generally, more water in the mix makes the concrete flow and finish more easily, but it also reduces the potential strength of the concrete and increases the time it takes for the concrete to set. Since this is such an important concept, let's take a look at it more closely. Slump is measured in inches, and this measurement is the result of a slump test. This test uses a 12-inch tall cone that is open on both ends. To measure a concrete slump, you fill this cone with concrete, tamping it down periodically with a rod, and then remove the cone. How many inches the concrete sinks, or slumps, indicates its slump. The more water that's in the concrete, the more it will slump. Concrete mix designs have a little wiggle room figured into them so that if some extra water is added to increase the workability, it won't compromise the final strength of the concrete. However, adding excess water can reduce the strength of the concrete, causing it to set very slowly, crack, and ultimately fail. As a mixer driver, it is your responsibility to make sure the concrete is the slump the customer requested when it arrives on the job. Your plant manager will batch the concrete so that it is close to the desired slump, but it will be up to you to adjust it to its final consistency. Your chief tool to help you do this is the slump meter, but it is very important to visually inspect every load to make sure the slump meter is correct. The slump meter does not directly measure slump, but instead measures the hydraulic pressure it takes to turn the barrel and mix the concrete. This pressure is usually an accurate way to gauge the slump of the concrete. The drier the mix, the more pressure it will take to turn the barrel, so a low meter reading means a higher slump number. Slump meters have a range of pressure readings on them, from 0 psi to 5,000 psi. Since the slump meter doesn't actually measure slump, it is not always accurate. Some mixes contain chemicals that make them more workable while using less water, and this can throw the slump readings off. For example, mixes with no air entrainment tend to read stiffer than they actually are. Also, the size of the load can affect the slump meter, with small loads reading a greater slump than large loads. Because of these things, the slump meter is a good indication of slump, but the only way to be totally sure your slump is right is to visually inspect the concrete to see that it is the right consistency. We've got all the information we need about the concrete we are hauling. Now let's look at the other products on our ticket. Products other than concrete on your ticket will fall into one of the following categories: a product added to the concrete mix itself, a product delivered to the job on your truck, or a service charge of some type. Let's start with products added to the concrete mix. The most common product added to the concrete is fiber reinforcement. These tiny fibers disperse into the concrete and help prevent cracks that can appear as concrete dries. There are many different types of fiber reinforcement. Here is a ticket that calls for fiber mesh. When you see this on your ticket, it means you need to put 1 bag of this product into your drum per yard. Another common fiber is Stealth, which is also put in at 1 bag per yard basis. Stealth fibers are less coarse than the standard fiber mesh, making them easier to finish. Both of these fibers come in 1 yard and 5 yard bags. So if you have an 8 yard load, you would throw in 1 5 yard bag and 3 1 yard bags. This ticket calls for Strux fibers, which are a very coarse fiber used in industrial settings. These fibers are billed out by the pound, with 1 5-pound bag put in per yard. Some plants are equipped with a liquid fiber system that pumps a gel fiber mix directly into the trunk. These fibers will look like this on your ticket. There are other types of specialty fibers that you may encounter on a limited basis, such as Novacon steel fibers. When you see a type of fiber on your ticket you are unfamiliar with, ask your plant manager about it to find out how to load it and how it might affect your load. Other products that are loaded directly into your mix at the plant are admixtures or chemicals that affect how the concrete pours. Most modern concrete mixes are designed with 1 or more admixtures in them to reach desired slump and strength. Some admixtures are added on a pour-to-pour basis to account for the conditions of that day. During cold weather pours, it's common for contractors to ask for accelerators, which are admixtures that help the concrete set in cold temperatures. This ticket calls for liquid chloride, which helps the top or exposed portion of the concrete set faster. This ticket calls for non-chloride accelerator, which helps the base or unexposed portion of the concrete to set faster. It is not uncommon for both of these accelerators to be used together, especially during the winter months. Some plants also have chloride accelerators in bag form, so that it can be added on the job to prevent the concrete from starting to set in the drum. Another type of admixture you will encounter is water reducer. These chemicals increase the slump of the concrete without adding any excess water. Many mixes have small doses of these chemicals in them, but some jobs call for larger doses. Wall mixes typically contain higher doses of these chemicals. This ticket shows a mix with a heavy dose of water reducer, which is referred to as super plasticizer. Because of the very heavy dose of chemical in this mix, it will be extremely sensitive to water. Even adding a couple of gallons to a 10-yard load could increase the slump dramatically. These mixes come with a warning on the ticket, so that you are aware that it will act differently than a typical mix. These chemicals can take a little extra time to mix into the concrete, so it is wise to wait until you finish washing down before you add any water to them. You may find that a mix with extra water reducer gains 2 or more inches of slump from the time you load until you leave the yard. If you see any admixture on a ticket that you are unfamiliar with, ask your plant manager to find out how it might affect your load. On this ticket we can see the customer has requested rebar. The size he wants is 1/2 inch by 20-foot lengths, and he has asked for 10 of them. Many trucks are equipped with rebar racks along the fender to carry this product. Other products that are commonly delivered are expansion joint and plastic film. Some plants have a range of these products, some only carry a few. If you see a product on your ticket that you aren't sure about, ask your plant manager if it is something you need to deliver along with the concrete. He will be able to tell you where to find the product and how to carry it on your truck. The final type of extra product on a ticket are service charges. In the winter, hot water and heated sand must be added to concrete to keep it from freezing. The winter service charge reflects these added costs. Smaller loads take almost the same amount of time and labor as a larger load, but bring in a much smaller amount of revenue. The minimum order charge allows us to deliver the small loads that customers might request without losing money. There are also charges for late deliveries or deliveries made on Saturdays, as well as charges for a split load that must be taken to 2 different job sites. Now that we have covered everything printed on a ticket, let's go back to our sample ticket and see what it tells us about our load. The customer is Everyman Construction, and they are pouring at the corner of First and Adams. When we arrive there, we need to come in through the parking lot to the back of the building to pour a ramp. We don't need to collect because it's already been paid for with a credit card. We are hauling 8.5 yards of 4,000 psi full air mix at a 6-inch slump. This load will have 1.5% of chloride to help it set in the winter conditions. We will need to add 8 bags of stealth fiber to the load, and the customer has requested that we bring 10 half-inch by 20-foot rebar. Everything looks in order, except for one thing. This customer is pouring a ramp, but he has asked for a 6-inch slump. Concrete of that slump will be too wet to stay at the incline of the ramp. We should ask our plant manager if this is correct. Once we make sure we know what slump the customer wants, it's time to head to the job. Make sure to mark what time you leave the plant and arrive on the job on your ticket. You'll notice at the bottom of the ticket there is a place for the customer to sign. The signature is important for several reasons. If there is a dispute over the load, this will help identify who received it, but more importantly, it protects Azinga from responsibility for damages incurred at the request of the customer. If you arrive on the job and the customer asks you to pull off the road onto an existing driveway, into a yard, or in any way that might damage the owner's property, you need to get the ticket signed by the customer before doing so. If the customer you are pouring for is a contractor, you can assume he knows the hazards of working with concrete. But if you are delivering to a homeowner, you should assume he is not aware of the hazards. At the bottom of the ticket, there is a section that warns about concrete burns and how to prevent them. Wet concrete undergoes a chemical reaction as it's hardening. This reaction can cause severe skin irritation, abrasions, and even chemical burns. It can also cause eye damage. A person exposed to wet concrete may not feel pain from this until after the damage is already done. Exposed skin is at risk, but this reaction can even affect skin through clothing soaked in wet cement. Instruct homeowners to wear protective clothes such as long-sleeve shirts, long pants, boots, waterproof gloves, and safety glasses when working with wet concrete. If they do get wet concrete on their skin, it should be washed off immediately. On the back of the ticket is a full safety data sheet for ready-mix concrete. This contains more detailed information on the composition of concrete and the hazards associated with it. There is a section at the bottom of your ticket labeled Driver Notes. While on the job, write down anything the customer does that might affect the quality of the finished concrete. For example, if the customer sprays water on the slab while he's placing it, if the customer adds a product of his own to the load, or if the customer requests an increase in slump. There is also a line below the notes section specifically to write down any water added on the job at the customer's request. This is a very important part of your job. There are times when a problem will arise with a load, sometimes months after the fact, and these notes are our first line of defense.
It's very important to write down information on the delivery ticket. Times are very important. There have been a number of occasions that customers complain about situations that we can undo by the times that are written on the ticket. Added water is another very important piece of information to write down on the ticket. Anything you see that the contractor is doing to the concrete can be very helpful. There have been more than one occasion where times and other information has saved us a lot of money.
When you're done pouring, mark the time in the 10-6 Finish Discharge box. If your order is a COD order, you'll need to make sure you collect payment before leaving the job. If the customer wants to use a credit card, he'll need to call dispatch to do so. If he is paying with a check, you'll need to get his driver's license number and phone number on the check. Mark the ticket Paid Check and write the check number on the ticket. Now you know how to read and fill out a delivery ticket. Your ticket contains not only the information about the load you are hauling, but also information about concrete itself, as well as where our responsibility ends for the load and the customer's begins. Your notes and observations complete the ticket, giving the company valuable information in case a problem arises. Every load is important, so every ticket is important.